can tell your old man you'll do some largemouth fish in another town. You just got too much on your plate to bait and cast a line. You can always put a rain check in his hand till you can't. You can keep putting off forever with that girl whose heart you hold, swearing that you'll last someday further down the road. You can always put a diamond on her hand till you can't. If you got a chance, take it. Take it while you got a chance. If you got a dream, chase it, 'cause a dream won't chase you back. If you're gonna love somebody, hold them as long and as strong and as close as you can till you can't. Yeah, if you got a chance, take it. Take it while you got a chance. If you got a dream, chase it, 'cause a dream won't chase you back. If you're gonna love somebody, hold them as long and as strong and as close as you can until you can't. Till you can't. Yeah. Take it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a really fun one.
Man, Justin Ostrander. We're
Yeah.
here in, what's the name of the studio?
Eastern Shores.
Eastern Shores, and you gave us some context for that because of your namesake.
Yeah, my last name, Ostrander, means Lord of the Eastern Shores. So,
Fitting.
yeah.
Well, for those of you that don't know, you were one of the first call A-list session guitarists here in Nashville, and I've had the privilege of talking to you once before for our
great.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
But I absolutely adore what you do, and you have an amazing YouTube channel, which we will have linked in the description
Oh, cool.
for people that want to check it out. But man, I'm just so pleased to talk to you today, and we got to start off with an amazing Cody Janson hit, Til You Can't, and boy, I'd love to hear how this developed, how you got the call for this,
Yeah.
the state of the song when you got
Yeah.
there, the gear, all that stuff.
Right.
What do you remember about the day?
Well, we were at Starstruck, and the thing about Cody's sessions is they're always going to make sure they have all the best songs that they could find and or write before they book the session. So a few times we've gotten the call like, hey, we're going to put something together, so expect a call or whatever, you know, and then 2 or 3 months later they decide they have the songs. And this one, I think this song Cody latched onto pretty quickly when he heard it. It's been around town for a really long time. I think it was written like 10 years ago. But for some reason, the tempo people were cutting it out or the vibe they were going for just never really worked. And I think it was Cody that made the song work, you know. And so his whole team believed in it really strongly for him in particular. And I just remember when we cut it, it's so much about the story, you know, of like you have an opportunity to do things until you don't anymore. Like there's a last time for everything.
Right.
And that's kind of a like black pill way to look at life, but it's also a good reminder too, you know, like call your dad.
Yeah.
There's going to be a time where he can't answer the phone. He's not going to be around to, you know? So just having that in our ears, you know, that lyric and that story, it was important for us to create sort of a sense of urgency, but not in an anxious way, like a let's go do this kind of thing. So that, I think that's the direction the band was coming from. And it's really simple guitar stuff throughout, as you heard. And then there was a one take outro thing when I was like, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm gonna do it. Like
that's make kind of the solo thing.
Yeah, make me redo something else if it's not right or whatever. Because it's a big band. There were, bass drums, keys, electric, acoustic. That's your standard 5-piece, but we had 2 electric guitar players. We had pedal steel and fiddle. And so finding all the spots to fit is huge. My chorus part, I'm just sort of playing that, here, I'll record outside the space so you have my track after the fact here. But I'm just playing that real simple over the 1 chord, then 6 minor. So I just have this in the top voice through all the changes. And then there's other things happening where the bass and the steel and the fiddle are going, moving through the chords from the 1 to the 6 or whatever. And it's really not like a guitar-oriented song, but everything needs to be right to support that story. That's the entire, the entire point, So very much a not look at me kind of thing, which is the majority of my career, Well, I was just talking with Rob about this yesterday. Rob and I did 2 days worth of tracking for a new guy named Drew Baldridge this week, and we were talking about some guitar players who, like, man, there are so many guys in this town that could play absolute circles around me. Rob was saying the same thing, and he's like, but you get them into one of these situations, and it's like, it's just a completely different skill set.
Absolutely. We were just talking with Dan Huff this week, and he knows. He knows exactly. And it's guys that can come up with ideas, and it's almost about your ability to self-edit is your biggest asset. And
right.
On a song like this that, is not a guitar-driven song.
Right. Yeah.
It's like coming up with that is not probably something somebody playing a lot of notes is going to think about doing, and
right.
that is the skill set.
Yeah, it's playing something that isn't just filler. Your part has to be cool and compelling, and it has to lift other things happening, like the vocal and the lyric. Mm-hmm. It's not just slow down. Mm-hmm. and well, I could just. Sometimes that's right. Just raking, we call them diamonds here in town, where it's just a schlang and the chord lasts the whole bar or whatever. I don't think you can build a career out of that. But if you can come up with really cool, creative things, like how can I do the thing that's been done a million times different in a way that makes people lean in? That's kind of my angle.
Was this the guitar that you used on this?
This is it, yeah. Man, this has become...
Yeah, what is it? What is this guitar, if you can tell us?
It's a Danocaster Jazzmaster. So, Dan of Danocaster fame is a huge Fender offset nerd. And I bought a Tele from him a few years ago. Gosh, probably longer than that because of the old COVID time warp. And we started talking about offsets, and I told him that I was thinking about finding an old Fender Jazzmaster. I don't have one. It'd be nice to check it out. The few guys I know who play them sound really good on them, and I would like to try one. And he said, well, if you find one that you think you want to buy, let me know and I'll go with you and we'll check it out. He said, I know those guitars inside and out. He said, I think I do a lot better with those than I do with Teles and Strats. And then he goes, or I could just build you one. So I think I looked around the usual shops here in town, which, we've got an embarrassment of riches as far as guitar shops go. And I didn't see anything that I was really interested in going and checking out. And I said, okay, let's do a build then. And he asked me what color I wanted. And I said, I've always really liked that burgundy mist metallic from the 60s. Is that doable, or is that does that color not exist? And he said, man, I've actually got I've got a batch of that. He had just refinished one of Mark Hill's basses. The funny thing is, when I brought this to my first session, Mark was on the session. He pulls out his P bass, and I pull this out, and we're like, wait a minute. And we took a picture of the two of them together and sent it to Dan, and he goes, I finished both of those out of the same can of paint. I was like, that's hilarious. But This guitar. Sorry, this has turned into a long story.
Oh, I like that.
There's
I like it.
one more cool part to this story. I went to play it at his house and to pick it up, and he's super low pressure. Like his dealers will want the guitar if you don't bond with it for whatever reason, you know. So he told me no pressure, play it, see if you like it, and he actually had this slide sitting on his deluxe reverb, and so I picked it up and I started goofing off. You know, I like to play slides, so I was. And I was like, man, this sounds different than all the glass slides I have. And I noticed that it's kind of wavy on the sides, and it's got the little logo on it. I was like, this is an old Coricidin bottle. Like one of the ones that people pay way too much money for on eBay, you know? And I was like, you know what you've got here? Like, this is a really great slide. And he goes, if you take the guitar, you can take the slide. And I was like, are you sure? Because the last time I saw one for sale on eBay, somebody wanted $300 for it. I mean, it had the original Coricidin label in it and everything, but that's literally the Dwayne Allman slide, and it's real glass. It's not like the Pyrex thing that people do now, you know. And so I got a free slide with my sweet Jazzmaster. It was pretty cool. I'm not unhappy at all. I'm terrified to play at most places because I don't want to drop it, especially like backstage has a concrete floor. Man,
There's no coming back here.
No.
And do you know what kind of pickups are in this guitar?
I was told they're Peter Leonard pickups.
And this bridge, was this the original one that he gave it to you with, or
No.
Okay.
I went a little goofy with some things. It had the full mastery setup, which is great. It's ultra traditional Jazzmaster. What's funny is I did a video about the tailpiece I put on this.
Yeah, and I texted you about it after you put it out.
Yeah. Well, I got some guys on there like, well, it's not a real Jazzmaster anymore. Like, of all the subsets of guitar nerd purists out there, Jazzmaster purists are
Perverts.
they're a different breed. Yeah. What I like about it is that you can see that there's these slots machined into the tailpiece, and where the strings mount into this plate is a lot lower. So it creates break angle over the bridge without having to do any like shimming and then resetting your pickups and change all that stuff. I don't know. I had guys commenting on that video. They're like, well, that's nothing a proper shim wouldn't fix. It's like, do you hear yourself? A proper shim? Like why do I want to put another piece of wood in the neck joint and change the angle of, I don't know, because you lean the neck back,
Sure.
right? And that's supposed to fix the angle.
One thing in your video that I thought was really interesting, and I'll link that video as we're talking about it, is you talked about when you're bending on a Jazzmaster, it can be sometimes difficult to kind of find that note, you know, because of the tailpiece. And that I think that this was the one that you landed on, obviously, kind of had the least amount of that challenge, like when you're trying to go to a note and find it, and it's a little bit difficult because you're kind of you're kind of swinging at the pinata blindfolded sometimes.
Yeah, I don't claim to know what all it is, but speculating, it seems like there's just a lot of string back here, and so you're pulling against this thing that's kind of giving and kind of not. And you'll go for your muscle memory spot where you hit a full step bend and it's not there. You got to go farther. You know, this fixed that for me on this guitar. Yeah. So, and then it just rings. Like those notes hang out for a really long time, especially compared to what it was with the mastery stuff. I mean, those would die really quickly. And I would also have a lot of noise, sympathetic ringing here. I was just losing energy across the bridge because there was no angle, you know. So,
and for people that don't understand, what's the logic behind the foam behind the bridge there?
Well, I did that because on the session I just got done doing yesterday, I was playing these. I call them chicks. I got that. That's what Cornell Dupree calls them. The reverb stuff, you know? And I want the reverb to hang out after that. I don't want the It's far less with this bridge and tail with this tailpiece on here, but there's still a little bit of that noise. So I put the thing there because you really notice it in a track when there's a mic that's like that far from your roll cloth, you know.
Yeah.
So
this was a guitar. Do you remember what amp you would have used on that Cody Janson track?
Bassman. Yeah,
just like a mid-60s Bassman.
Mm-hmm. It's a white knob Bassman.
Okay, so earlier in the 60s.
It's a 64 though.
Okay.
So they call them tuxedo
Right.
Bassmans. They went to the black Tolex and faceplate, but it was still the presence knob circuit. So
Wow.
yeah.
And do you know what cabinet it would have been?
Yeah, Bogner 212 with an ET65 mic'd up.
Okay, so 112 cab.
212, sorry.
212, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a 112 open back here that I'm playing through. That's the same speaker, ET65.
Okay, so that's a warehouse speaker.
Mm-hmm. But that's the one here that you hear that I'm playing now is an open back Morgan cab. But my cartridge cab is a closed back 212 oversized Bogner.
And for all like of those, the delay processing and stuff like that, was that printed or is that stuff that they added?
Oh, some of it, like the big stop before the final chorus and everybody kind of hits a thing like that, like they added a ton of reverb.
Okay.
But there's, we all sort of self-mix a little bit. I'm going to have some reverb and a little bit of delay just to create some space. I don't want it to be too big. I don't want to overcommit the mix engineer to what, like an ultra long reverb tail, unless it's just like one spot, super integral to the part and the emotion and the thing that I'm trying to accomplish. But for the most part, I keep that stuff really subtle, because somebody else is mixing it.
Right.
I want to be a friend to that person.
I hear you.
So,
well, it's a fantastic song, and just love to see kind of the whole thing come to life here in front of me, and even though you, as you said, you thought the parts were simple, it's like it's so much harder to make it simple. It's such a temptation as a guitar player to go over. Well, I have one more question actually. Like, so on the ending part of that solo where you said you were kind of going for it, was there anything that you were kind of like channeling as far as like thinking of, like when you think of parts, do you think of like particular players that you think, oh, like this should have a more like this player vibe, or do you just kind of just go with like what's your mindset on how you choose to develop a part like that or to go for a solo here?
Yeah.
How do you sort of internalize what's your approach to something like that?
Yeah. So my solos have always been kind of off the cuff. We'll get to a couple songs later, where it's all just in the moment. And for whatever reason, that seems to work better for me than trying to like compose a solo, the guys, and I'll do that, sometimes the producer hears a melody that they want in the solo, so you figure that out, and then you've got to work it in, and then it's no longer just off the cuff or whatever. But for whatever reason, my very first take in the moment with the band, as we're playing it down, tends to have an energy to it that works well, And so I do that a lot to the point where we will, we'll move it to its own track and then go back and lay some ground cover is what we call it, like play rhythm underneath on the track that I took the solo on. And then we'll do playlists on the solo track. And man, often it's like, I'm not beating the first one. Like there's an excitement there that, just really works. And that's for solos. A lot of times the solo section also just needs to be a new melody. It needs to be something that kind of cleanses our palate so our third chorus doesn't feel boring. There's got to be something, you got to get away from it with a bridge and or a solo, and then the third chorus works. So on this song, I stepped on a boost and I was like, maybe it's less shreddy and it's more downstroke, single note thing, but that was the one take. I mean, so
was that your famous color sound or the throwback boost?
Oh man, Maybe, yes. I think so. It might have been that, or it might have been my Mastortion.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I love that throwback.
Yeah.
That, and he's apparently running low on them.
Okay.
Like the original transistors that he's used or whatever. That's one of my favorite pedals. For EQ, for clean boost, for fuzz. Two different types of transistors. There's a little switch that makes it real squishy and sort of have some of that like self-collapsing balloon, you know, as it decays or whatever. I don't tend to use that side. I tend to use the other side, but what a great pedal. I've done videos on at least one video on that pedal alone, just because I think it's so awesome, and I hardly see anybody use it.
Yeah. Yeah, he makes great stuff and great pickups too.
Yeah, I've got his P90s in my gold top, and that's the only reason I haven't taken out a second mortgage for like a 53, because it made it sound like an old guitar.
You're right.
You know, and I had the Gibsons that came in it, and those are actually great. New Gibson P90s are they really are. I had Fralins in it. I tried Duncan's, the Antiquities, I think. I don't remember what else I tried, but I put the throwbacks in it, and I was like, oh, okay. Like everybody else has kind of sounded the same, like 5% different, and these just sound totally different. I don't know why, but I just know I like them.
Well, yeah, enough said. I think people should go check them out. We'll make sure that we put a link to that also in the description. I want to move to another song that we talked about and I'll let you tell the story, but it's Chris Janson and it's Buy Me a Boat. And yeah. I had asked you in sort of the pre-interview phase, I said, do you remember the first time that you played on a big hit? You kind of like, you heard yourself on a big hit, and you said that this was that song.
That was it. Yeah.
So how did that happen?
I got the call for a demo session at my friend Ben Phillips' place, and he used to have a house in Berry Hill that was just a studio. Like he lived in Brentwood, come into to work at his place, and we had heard that it was for this writer named Chris Janson, and for whatever reason he didn't come to the session. He just trusted us, you know. So we did whatever we wanted to do, and the song ended up like it's the song's fault always that it gets big. It's never, hey, this guitar part is why this is the #1 song in the country. No, what we're doing is like hanging window dressing and finish carpentry. Like we didn't build the house. We can only present it as the best version of itself, right? So we went kind of nuts on the parts, and I remember playing 2 parts that I still have the settings for saved in my Mobius, and this was over 10 years ago, or maybe
it looks like it was 2015. So yeah.
Oh yeah, 10 years.
Yeah, it was.
I think we cut it in the fall of 2014. I was just getting started playing sessions.
And this is a tremolo setting, I'm presuming that you mean on
there was a tremolo and a wah setting. I'm using I thought it was my old Crybaby that my dad bought for me, very first pedal I ever had. I'm still not totally sure, but I can get pretty close with the Mobius, so I use that now. But yeah, we had no direction, and so everybody ended up playing what they wanted to. Jeff Roach played keys on it, and he went really crazy with the synths and the chorus, and it was kind of it just ended up being a really fresh version of the sort of tough but quirky country with a lyric that had a really like kind of tongue-in-cheek story going on, you know? And it worked. Like Chris went on the Bobby Bones show. This is the story as I understand it. He went on the Bobby Bones show, and Bobby asked him if he had any songs he wanted to play. He's like, well, I just finished this demo, Buy Me a Boat. And they played it, and Bobby's like, man, that's really awesome. And so many people listened to Bobby that they started requesting it in whatever markets, you know, all over the country. And it ended up going #1. It's like 4 or 6x platinum now or something.
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
It's 5 times platinum.
5, okay. Yeah.
So
holy cow.
Yeah. So that's a lot of records.
Yeah.
Do you have a pretty good sense when you play on something of whether it's going to be a hit? Like I always ask people, how's your hit-o-meter?
Oh, right. Yeah. Man, I think it depends. Like that Till You Can't song, everyone was like, song of the year as we were cutting it. And it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next year. Buy Me a Boat, I thought it was super cool. I didn't hear the finished version because he wasn't there. So I didn't even hear lyric. We had a work tape, you know. If your viewers don't know, a work tape is a guitar vocal. That's a really obvious way to describe it. You hear someone singing with an acoustic guitar. And it's usually at the end of the writing session in the writing room. One of the writers is playing, somebody else is singing. Sometimes it's even the same person and you can hear both clearly into their iPhone's mic or whatever. But sometimes, this is frustrating if you're charting, sometimes the person singing is reading the lyrics on their phone like this and the guitar is on the other side of the room. And so you kind of have to infer the changes because they're not recording. I don't know. But the work tapes are really zero production level. It's like, let's get a copy of the song down so we have the form.
And will you use that as a scratch vocal, or do you kind of just feel like at that point, like, because it may not be in time or anything like that?
You know, some people cut their work tapes to a click, and if they do, we'll extract the vocal, and that can be a scratch vocal on a session. But most of the time, the artist is singing the scratch with us. You know, sometimes the artist is so good that scratch vocal can be the final vocal. Like if they sing a couple scratches, you can easily comp together, you know. Cody's like that. Cassie Ashton is like that, new female artist. She's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Dolly Parton's like that. I just recorded guitars on her new single that I Wouldn't Be Here If You Hadn't Been There. You know, they just put out after her husband passed. She's 79.
Wow.
And she sang along with the band, also at Starstruck. And man, it was surreal, you know, hearing her voice in the cans and then just hearing her nail everything completely. They went back and did vocals the next day. Her producer, Kent, was like, don't know that we need to, but, you know, I guess we will. I mean, sometimes having a scratch vocal is what inspires the band to find something really cool, you know.
Did you feel like this song, like this being the first number one you played on, did you feel like that begot a lot more work for you, or was there like a specific song, if it wasn't this one, that you felt like was sort of like a turning point in your session career where it like you started getting called all the time? I think
this was that.
This was that song.
Yeah, it was my first number one. Everybody was wondering who it was. It did not only did the guitars sound different, but the mix was completely different. So it was Ben Phillips' demo mix that you were hearing on the radio. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't Justin Niebank, or trying to think at the time who would have been like the main guys. Now you're hearing a lot of Jim Cooley, Reed Shippen, Dave Klaus, Jack Clark. Jack mixes all the Cody stuff, you know. But back then, like, Ben's demo mixes weren't all over country radio, and they're really good mixes. So it was like, hey, like there just everything about that song kind of was enough of a tweak. And so I would get calls because they wanted who played on Buy Me a Boat. And I was like, oh, so this is how this happens. You know?
They wanted that tremolo sound with the Mobius.
Well, just that level of like outside the box-ness, you know? At that point, when I got into the session world, it's like we were trying to make the most non-guitar sounds possible with a guitar. It wasn't full-on 80s like synth pickup guy stuff, you know, but everybody had fuzz pedals and octave pedals. The Goat Keeper was really big.
Oh, that tremolo, huge tremolo.
Yeah, that would take MIDI clock and lock to the song, you know. So you'd hear that at the beginning of a Jason Aldean song, like, and it's just, you're just hitting the low string and letting the pattern do its thing. So that song, it's they want the guitar player from it because they want to recreate the success, you know?
They want to try to put all the right ingredients together.
Yeah. There's a little bit of like, I don't know, like baseball player like superstition, I think. I'm not changing this jock strap until we win another World Series. You know what I mean? Like I need the same players, the same room, the same writers. Like who wrote most of George Strait stuff? It was oh gosh, why am I gonna blank on his name? You want to recreate Dean Dillon, obviously. I played on a record for him a couple years ago, and I hope they release it. He's cut like, I don't remember how many songs we cut. He's like, oh yeah, we'll put it out. Nothing. And it's like the best. Like they don't make songwriters like that anymore.
Wow.
He's so good. So, do you want to hear "Buy Me a Boat"?
I do, and in this way, we'll correct all the folks that might be playing it wrong on Broadway.
Dude, I have, for some reason, I've heard a lot of cover bands do it. I've seen videos of Chris's guitar player. You know, it's hard to do the two parts together, so I get it. But man, for whatever reason, it's like nobody could figure out how. I thought it was pretty straightforward. It's a helicopter tremolo on one side. And then it's a dotted eighth, like a real lazy, like we're floating down the river, right?
Right.
The song's about a boat. Like there's so much that goes into just playing a simple part, you know? So
well, we'll fix it for them today.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I ain't rich, but I damn sure wanna be. Working like a dog all day ain't working for me. I wish I had a rich uncle that'd kick the bucket and I was sitting on a pile like Warren Buffett. I know everybody says money can't buy happiness, but it can buy me a boat. It can buy me a truck to pull it. It can buy me a Yeti 110 ass down with some silver bullets. Yeah, and I know what they say, money can't buy everything. Well, maybe so, but it can buy me a boat. They call me redneck, white trash, and blue collar, but I could change all that if I had a couple $1 million. I keep hearing that money is the root of all evil, and you can't fit a camel through the eye of a needle. I'm sure that's probably true, but it still sounds pretty cool, cause it could buy me a boat. It could buy me a truck to pull. It can buy me a Yeti 110 ice down with some silver bullets. Yeah, and I know what they say, money can't buy everything. Well, maybe so, but it can buy me a boat to float down on the water with a beer. I hear the Powerball lotto is sitting on 100 mil. Well, that'll buy me a brand new riding reel, and it can buy me a boat. It could buy me a truck to pull it. It could buy me a Yeti 110 ass down with some silver bullets. Yeah, and I know what they say, money can't buy everything. Well, maybe so, but it can buy me a boat. Yeah, and I know what they say, money can't buy everything. Well, maybe so, but it can buy me a boat. Yeah, it can buy me a boat.
It's really just that simple. It's like the idea was, like I said, like a lazy floating down the river. You had another song that started playing.
We will get right back to our interview with Justin. But before we do, I want to talk to you about D'Addario and the amazing products that they have that not only I use, but Justin is using in this very video. You'll notice that the cable that goes from his guitar into his exact tone pedal board is using none other than the American Stage cable, which is one of my favorite instrument cables that D'Addario makes and is used by many great artists, including the great Robin Ford, who in fact, when I built him a pedal board, insisted that the entire rig was built with American Stage cable, if you can believe it. Also, you'll notice, sitting on top of the monitors, Justin has a box of D'Addario strings, which has been a string that he has relied on to make his living as a session musician and has been using for many years. We'll now get back to the interview with Justin.
So the one guitar in the intro, like, what made it so cool is that we had this really just crazy helicopter tremolo. Deep square wave, real fast, right? And then it was sort of like just lazily following the changes. And you notice I haven't played this in forever. I missed some of the changes on the bridge. I would have asked to punch that if we were on the session. But the main guitar is really, it's just a dotted eighth at 77 BPM, and I'm playing really most of it's with the toe up. Right, most of with the wah, with the heel down, and it's very, very limited. I might get to about right there, and then back it off.
What's the thing that people typically get wrong about it?
Man, it's like I've heard people playing it with a flanger. I've heard them trying to have the real deep helicopter tremolo thing on the part. It's like, in their defense, how do you combine those two sounds?
Sure.
You kind of can't as one guitar player, but you should just play the wah part, you know. If you need to, let your bass player be the, even if there's no tremolo, like people are gonna they'll get that. But really, without the effects, all you're hearing is. And it's like, I'm even emphasizing it in a dotted way. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, you know. And then at the beginning of that bridge, I missed it, but there are some like real big unison bends just to add energy from one of the tracks. But it's literally playing the song down twice and turning effects off and on. Like, that's the hard thing. One hard thing, I guess, is that sound requires two different pedals. The wah is from my Mobius. The delay is from the timeline. I got to turn both of those off at the end of the verse before I get to the
tremolo.
Yeah. The big chords, the big dry rock chords for the chorus. Yeah, the tremolo, that was something I'd have to turn that off for the chorus too.
Right.
You know, but that was just one sound.
Here's an interesting question, like about stuff like this, and I think it's something that comes up in the guitar player community a lot. How valuable do you feel like having a switcher is versus just having pedals in series? We'll show some nice B-roll of your entire pedal board rig here, and I think you've got some videos on it in more detail as well on your YouTube channel. But do you have a sort of like a guideline where you would sort of instruct somebody like, what's the reason that you don't use a switcher? Something like that, obviously, it would be able to facilitate more easily where you could hit one button, it would turn off multiple effects at the same time and engage other effects, so you wouldn't have to go through. Do you have a sort of a reasoning behind why or why not to use one?
So most people in town, and I had this on an older board, they have a strip where all their overdrives are set to a bypass strip. Mm-hmm. With that, it's easy to catch two buttons with one step. You can pre pre-program a gain stage if you have a master switch that turns all of those on and off. For this, like, I do so much dialing on the fly. I don't know how that would work for having 2 Strymon pedals. Like, I don't want to have those run to a true bypass switcher, you know. But I mean, in that sort of situation, it'd make my life a little easier. I've literally, like, I'm a little cramped here, but I've literally, you know, two things at a time, step on them together in the middle of as we're tracking.
Yeah.
I'll step on a boost before a solo. I'll turn things on and off. Like, I don't know. Part of what can be cool about this line of work is giving a performance in the studio. You know, like when I track here at home, a lot of times I build up the choruses with 2 to 4 tracks. I find an intro hook, double that maybe. There's verse 2 fills, and it's all parsed out. But on a session, when you're playing with a live band and everybody's trying to get multiple parts, like the only person who doesn't layer multiple parts is the bass player. And sometimes that's not even true. Sometimes he'll have a little synth rig and they'll want some like synth line. So he'll play bass on the song and then in the bridge do this sub bass keyboard thing, you know. But if I'm the only guitar player, I'm doing 3 tracks minimum. Keyboard land is doing 2, acoustic is doing 2 or 3. Drums are playing drums and then doing perk. Oftentimes, if, you know, like on faster sessions, sometimes you have like 3 songs a session or 4 or whatever. If you're doing a slam session, like the demo thing, which I don't really miss that very much, but sometimes the drummer's making a loop while we're listening to the work tape, just for efficiency's sake, you know? And in those situations, like I can't, well, let me play this part on the choruses real quick, and then I'll double that, and then I'll go down from the top. Like everybody else is going to sit waiting for me to do my chorus thing. So I have to be able to catch all the things on the way by, you know? And in that sense, it's a little bit more like live playing, you know? You just get to go back and punch something if you need to.
So do you think a switcher is that valuable for the session world? Because I think if I look at like all the kind of the first call guys like you and Bukovac and Rob, I don't think any of you guys use switchers.
Rob's got a strip for his
but nothing
overdrives.
programmable though. Like
No.
So what do you think the reason for that is?
I don't know. I think Nashville has this aesthetic obsession with vintage things. You have to have old amps. You have to have old guitars. It's okay if you have a bunch of digital stuff at your feet, but we're going into the front of the amp with all of it. And, you know, like I've got settings saved on my HX on my other board. I've got settings saved on the Mobius and the timeline here. Things that I can get to quickly that I always tweak for the song anyway, you know, whether it's tempo or feedback or decay or the mix level, if there's any modulation that I want to get rid of or have or whatever, you know. So the pedal board has kind of replaced all that for the most part, you know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know what I'm missing, I guess, because I've never spent time having a giant MIDI switcher, you know, and programming all this stuff out. I've never been on a tour that required so many different specific sounds.
Right.
You know, I think that's where most people, a lot of the touring guys still do that.
I think for touring it makes sense because they have to be able to cover so much ground and they can program a set list and the sounds are the same. But
yeah,
I think just speaking with producers and other people in your position, it sounds like the main reason why they still stick to pedals in series in front of the amp is mostly workflow, because every session you can be reinventing the wheel, and so it doesn't really gain you a lot to have a bunch of presets that, you know, are not in time with the song, or, you know, all these different things. And I think that's also largely why you see so many guys still hanging around with those M9s. I know you've upgraded to the HX, but, you know, having a knob for all those things and like having all of the different variety, you can see why something like that just intuitively could be, you know.
Yeah, people are comfortable. And it's not like having an M9 has slowed down the guys that still use it. It's not like people aren't calling them because of it.
Right.
For me, the HX just, I I think it brought the audio quality level up.
Undoubtedly a better device. I think that some guys are just like, they know how to get what they need out of this thing, sort of thing, and they didn't want to learn the blocks.
The one MIDI kind of thing I do have on my other board that has the HX on it is I have a micro clock that sends BPM
from disaster area. Okay.
It sends BPM to the HX, an H9, and a Dunlop Echoplex pedal. So it'll give quarter notes to those pedals, and then whatever pattern I want, I have saved in each patch of the HX. So I have some eighth note delays. It'll play back an eighth note depending on the BPM it receives from the clock, or 16th note slap, or the dotted thing, or whatever. And that's kind of, I guess, as far as programming goes, like if the songs are more pop oriented. Like the last 2 days, Rob and I were both like, hey, what's the tempo? And I just set my little micro clock to it, and then everything's on that, and for his board, he's got a timeline, I think, or the other Strymon delay. I don't remember, but it takes BPM. And so there are some things that you do that, I mean, now stuff is so pop oriented, so programmed. We were playing along with programmed tracks. It's got to be in time. It's not the old days where the only thing happening at a tempo was the tremolo, and it was cool that it was out of time. Now it's like, if it's going to be out of time, it's got to be real subtle, or you've got to lock it, because everything else is locked to the grid. And so finding the ways to like pocket that and make it feel good, but still being real precise. To me, that's the struggle of playing stuff that feels good, on the grid.
One thing that you brought up about Rob that I wanted to ask you, that you'd have some interesting insight into as far as Nashville session guitarists. On a session where, like, let's say you and Rob and another session guitarist are on the same session, are they usually having you guys do dissimilar parts, or are they having you do almost the same part and then kind of choosing which person works better in different parts of the song? Like, is it Steely Dan-esque in that they're sort of like basically having like a Lee Ritenour, a Larry Carlton, or a Hugh McCracken play the same part and being like, I like Hugh's part better on the bridge, I like Larry's part better, how are they sort of dividing the labor between a session that has multiple guitar players?
Yeah, so we both would play a part from the top. We're layering. We're not giving them options to choose between. We're not like auditioning for the record as they hire us. I feel like, especially in like the Steely Dan case you mentioned, they're like, well, we don't know what we're going to use. We're going to take a year and a half to make the record, so let's pay this guy for a day to come in and blow a bunch of solos, and then we'll mute his tracks and we'll bring somebody else in, and here's what all the options were, and this is what won the day or whatever. That can happen if they feel like they didn't quite get what they wanted on the session, or if an idea came to the producer or the artist or the label after the fact that wasn't on the session. Case in point for that, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about how Rob and I worked the last 2 days. I got a call from Midland's producer. They wanted a really honky tonk. What's the song? I'm going to turn everything off so I can try to sound somewhat honky tonk on this guitar. Play Something Country. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to back up and tell one more story, and then the other two things I just told you. Play Something Country is a good idea, what you just mentioned, because they had every top guitar player come in and play a hook on that song, and they were like, it just sounds like too much of what is all over country radio. I think they had Brent Mason and Brent Rowan. I think Kenny Greenberg may have played a part, or trying to think of guys from that era that were on a bunch of records. Maybe Dan, I don't know.
Maybe JT.
Well, it was a young, relatively unknown JT that ended up playing that. I'm gonna try to dial. I'm gonna do this. No, I'm not gonna do this any service at all. But he came in. Like that really trashy, and man, there's even more notes. It's something like that, right? And all of a sudden, everybody's ears were like, oh, and they had, I don't know how many different players beforehand, but it was like, we need someone outside of the mainstream because we're trying to do something a little bit different, know? And I think that song, if I understand my lore correct, that was what blew his career wide open. So I got a call after the session. They had presented the songs to the label for Midland, and they said, man, this song needs a rhythm guitar track like Play Something Country. So on Play Something Country, I'll leave a little bit of slap back on. I think it's in G, and it's literally just this bonehead, extra heavy hand, intentionally, Of course, I'm down. It's that standard thing of it's that sort of thing, and incessant. Like it never. It is just like, I don't know, like coked out redneck guitar, like drooling on your guitar. I mean, so I did 2 passes of that and sent it off. But that was the thing. It happened after the fact here because they had the idea for it after the session happened. So, different things can be added after the fact or whatever. When you got 2 guys on the session, man, sometimes, like, you want them to play to their strengths. You hired them for what they do. You also want that little bit of like competitive encouragement, like, I've been listening to Rob since I moved to town, so I'm gonna really I'm gonna sit up a little straighter, and pay attention to what I'm doing. When I first came to town and I was playing showcases and local gigs with all these new artists who were trying to get deals or whatever, he was the guy on a lot. Like, I was learning his parts, like, oh, it's Rob McNally. Oh, this is going to be cool, So yesterday and the day before for us, there would be an intro hook, and the producer's like, one of you want to take that or whatever? And sometimes Rob would say, I got an idea for something else if you want to grab the hook. It's like, okay, great. Or, the big one is you hear a song and you think that needs baritone. Okay, so who's going to do baritone? The other guy's going to stay out of the low end, And then for solos, like, we would both stack a part or 2 each. And then, oh yeah, we need to do a solo. So you kind of almost just trade off, Sometimes a producer has a guy that they want to do all the main things, and then they have somebody else, like, I want you to play rhythm guy supporting role. But I've never really been in that situation. They want different flavors, so they want both of us to take solos throughout the days, because we're making a whole record, So yeah, I mean, it's really like, how many ideas do you have that you want to get down? What's the other guy doing? And then what on top of that does the producer want to make sure he has that you haven't given him yet? Yeah. So
I think it's a really interesting distinction, because I think that when I talk to guys from LA, like, obviously there's overlap in this, because it's the similar job, but I think it's always interesting to hear the perspective of somebody who's doing it here professionally, and kind of how that division works, and how they deal with multiple guitar players. Because I would say probably the LA is sort of pretty different than it was 30 years ago, and I think Nashville is still has a lot more semblance of what we would have seen in an LA session all those years ago.
Right.
So in some ways it's refreshing to hear some of these stories, and that you'll have two guitar players on a session or multiple guitar players on a session. Like it's almost unheard of now on the West Coast that would happen.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, that the record we just got done doing, there might be something that they want to hear, and they're like, let's try somebody else. There's a pretty solid menu of players. One thing you got to get over is not getting called for something. Like that can eat people up inside, and you just got to understand that there is zero animosity, or like no one's going to call you because they feel guilty about not calling you. You know what I mean? And don't just get out of your own head about that. Especially now in like Instagram, you're scrolling and you're like, wait a minute, that guy told me he was going to call me for that session and I'm not on it. Like, what did I do? Nothing. He may have talked to the artist who's like, man, this other song that went number one, I love the guitar player part that was on that, and it was somebody else, so I have to have him.
Right.
Okay. Like, great.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah. Well, I want to move to another song called "Everything's Gonna Be All Right."
Oh yeah,
and not Bob Marley,
right,
but the great Kenny Chesney and David Lee Murphy. And it's funny when you mentioned this song as one that you'd want to do. I was like, man, I haven't heard about David Lee Murphy in decades. Because he was huge like when I was a kid. In the mid '90s.
Yeah.
But this song kind of it was a huge hit for both of them. And it starts out with that kind of acoustic, guitar, and then everything just kind of just builds out from there, and it's actually like a really great song, And
it's awesome.
And I'm curious how you got connected with them and got called for this song, this session. Yeah. What do you remember?
Yeah. So, the producer of that track was a co-writer on it, and he was like kind of the track guy, co-writer. We use that term to mean the person building the loops or in the box instruments in the writing room with the writers when they're writing the song. And then it usually falls to that person to build the demo out as well, So they wrote that song, and this guy, Chris Stevens, I had cut guitars for him. I had played on some CCM stuff for him, like a Mandisa record, Johnny Diaz, Darlene Check, like some of these big worship artists. I'm trying to think of some others. We did like some New Song stuff and Hillsong. So he was working his way into the country world and was using me for guitars, and it was always out of his pocket, so I didn't charge him very much at the time, but he just wanted electric guitars. He did that acoustic part.
Really? Okay.
I think I might be wrong about that. I think he had me replay it. I take that back. But it's really sparse. It's the lyric, it's a loop, it's acoustic, there might be a pad or something. And then out of nowhere comes this 3-part slide solo and some little tasty Strat things, And that song was another demo that David Lee Murphy was like, I'm going to put that on my record, and I'm going to have Kenny Chesney sing half of it. And somehow that guy makes insanely great decisions. He had that song in the early 90s. What's it called? Dust on the Bottle. Most recurrent country song of all time.
Yeah. I
was told 10 years ago that he still makes $40,000 a year on that song alone.
Wow.
Because he owns the master, I guess, or all the publishing or something. Like he makes more money off of that than so much other stuff, and somehow he's figured out a way to be completely independent and have, worldwide country songs. Like if there's a jukebox that plays country music somewhere in Germany, it's got Dust in the Bottle on it, I mean, so he ended up putting it out and it went number one. Yeah. And once again, I have like about 20 number ones under my belt. The two that were demos are, the Buy Me a Boat track and this track. those two were demos that were put out to country radio. And I just thought this song was super cool. Everybody loved the slide thing out of the middle of nowhere, just out of left field. Here comes this harmonized doubled slide solo. And that was always something else that nobody quite got right. So I wanted to talk about that part, at least, you know.
Do you remember gear-wise what you used?
My Jeff Senn Strat.
Okay.
And it was probably through my analog outfitter Sarge, which is what we're hearing today.
Okay. And if, for people that don't know what that is, how would you sort of equate that to, you know, something that people might be familiar with?
Man, I'm for all my viewers out there, I'm looking for an amp that I can actually point people to that they can actually find and buy. Like, they don't make these anymore. The company went under, which bums me out a lot because they're super cool. It's basically, from what I understand, it's kind of a 5E3 circuit with EL84s.
Okay.
And the transformers out of a defunct Hammond A100.
Okay.
It's super heavy. It's got massive iron.
How many watts is it?
Like 15.
Okay, so similar wattage to this just standard 5E3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little they may have done something a little different with the tone stack, but it's literally volume treble bass.
Wow.
I just love really simple stuff like that. It sounds great on the edge of breakup. I mean, no nothing at all. That's just the amp. I mean, it just sounds and I can back my touch off and get it that sort of clean plus, you know. Is that what Tim Pierce calls it? Clean plus or clean extra? I can't remember.
But in most of the stuff, another kind of question along these lines, most of the stuff that we've recorded in this, is most of this in mono? Because I think that some people too, like at 100%. Home, they think like, you know, you guys are hauling these stereo rigs and multiple channels. Like, how many channels would you realistically get in most of these big hits that were number ones? Are these, you know?
I can't point to a single song on the radio where I tracked stereo.
Wow.
I'm off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. I've done it a few times. Usually for like weird indie records, I'll take a couple of small. I've got a little Supro. I think they called it a Comet. It's like a single-ended amp. I have a quote unquote space heater from a guy in New York. It's not the guy that does. It's not an Austin Hooks amp.
Okay.
So I guess there was a community of people who were on a DIY amp builder forum, and this guy found plans that everybody was sharing and built it, and I got it for like $700 off a Reverb or something, and it's amazing. And you know, you asked me what amp I played on the Cody Janson track, and I told you it was my Bassman, and I lied. His producer loves my space heater amp. Oh. If I show up to a session he's on, or sorry, his engineer, the guy Jack that mixes all the stuff, he loves the space heater amp, so I make sure I have that. That's what you're hearing on from like 2022 forward. All the Cody Janson stuff that I'm on is that space heater amp. So,
wow.
Yeah, but it's all mono. And if you want stereo, then I'll play the other side and double it and do a tight double.
Right.
That you get so much more of a stereo impact than just your one signal going to two different amps, you know?
Yeah.
So
before we talk a little more about Everything's Gonna Be All Right, I want to mention one of our sponsors that makes this interview possible, our friends over at Mogami. Now, I noticed here on Justin's rig that was built just masterfully by the folks at XTS Exactone, the pedalboard kings of Nashville. Everything is using Mogami 2319 or 2524 on here. Beautiful stuff. And they choose that cable because they know it is a very high quality Japanese cable, shielded, quiet, low capacitance, and it's pretty much the standard for most rig builds in town, whether it's here in Nashville or out where we are in California and in LA. Very, very good stuff. And Mogami has agreed to give away 5 free instrument cables, 10-foot with Neutrik connectors. All you have to do to enter to win one of those is follow Justin on Instagram, follow Vertex on Instagram, and follow Mogami on Instagram, and comment the word Mogami in any of the teaser footage that we put out with us and Justin, and that will automatically enter you to win. We'll choose the winner 14 days after the video goes live on YouTube, and we will let you know if you've been one of those winners, and we'll get those shipped directly to your door. Let's get back to talking about Everything's Gonna Be All Right. It's so interesting that there's such a directive amongst sort of amateurs, that's such a thing in almost every person that I talk to. There's never there's never stereo.
I think it's more of a thing in the touring world. I did it on my last touring gig. I had a Princeton Reverb and a Morgan the JO12, which was, I told Joe I wanted a 5E3 and I wanted to run it side by side with a Princeton Reverb, and I wanted to go left out of my M9 into one amp and right into the other. And I said, my problem is that the Tweed amp compresses differently, and so it ends up lopsiding my effects if I'm trying to go wide with them. So I need a 5E3 that responds, like the front end of it is more like a Princeton Reverb or a deluxe reverb, you know, just so I get the same natural mix level, you know, because you'll have ultra loud repeats with a slightly gainy 5E3 compared to a Princeton Reverb or whatever. So he sent me an amp, and he ended up walking me through changing a couple components over the phone.
Okay.
I'm decent with a soldering iron. You know, I'll fix pedals and switches, and I've swapped pickups and whatever, and speakers. Way too many speakers. But yeah, that's a great amp. That's in my cartage rig now.
Wow.
That's my Tweed amp at the top of my rack. So
beautiful. Well, do we want to play a little of Everything's Gonna Be All Right?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I'll play all three parts. Okay, so I doubled that. That could be cool. And then I thought, how about a high harmony? You know, why not? This is fun. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
I remember almost being apologetic, sending it to the producer like, hey, I'm not trying to make this my solo record, you know, or featuring me. But there's a bunch of layers on the slide solo. I can do something different if you think it's too much. Because the track is so empty otherwise. It's like that loop. It's the vocals. It's a pad. And then there's like a guitar part going.
Where does that part happen in the context of the track?
It comes in later.
Can you just throw that on there, like where it would be in place?
Yeah, let's see.
Curious.
Let's see if I'm.
Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be
slide stuff comes back too. Yeah. So there's like a and there's layers of it in the outro, kind of tucked behind that. But that real simple, like I've always been a fan of the dead clean Like maybe not even through an amp. I might have even played that direct. I'll go into the front of my TG2, you know.
So for the rhythm guitar
Yeah,
part. No compressors or anything, you think?
Again, I'll leave that to the engineer. And that's the guy who hired me to play on the track, the producer. Like he built the entire track, and I played the that acoustic part. Let's listen to that.
Was that a Dreadnought or
Gibson 61 J50? I got that from Groons. They used to be downtown, and I didn't think it was possible to get a good deal, like a deal from Groons. You know, they just had so much tourism traffic. So they've got tourism prices on all their guitars.
Right.
You know? Like I get it, whatever. But when they were moving to their other location on 8th Avenue, they were selling their repair pile off at basically at cost. So this guitar had a couple divots in 2 of the frets. It was like it fell forward in a gig bag and the strings hit the frets real hard. There was like a perfect string-shaped scoop out of the fret. And they wanted $1,300 for a 61 J50.
wow?
That's just a natural finish J45. It's the same guitar. And in 61, they had the adjustable ceramic bridges, you know, which weren't super desirable, so whatever. But I had Jeff Sen smooth those frets out. There was enough there that we didn't have to replace the frets. And then Hunter, who's no longer at Glazer, who's one of my favorite guys at Glazer. He ended up moving to Florida a long time ago. He put an actual bone saddle on it. And that became my main recording acoustic for a very long time. I still have it. I love that guitar. I also play a lot a Harmony Sovereign. The Stairway acoustic, you know. There are some guys in the area, like there's a guy in Alabama I got it from who he takes the top off, he takes the neck off, he resets all the bracing, reapplies the top, resets the neck, dresses the frets, puts new button tuners on it, and I, once again, paid $1,300 for a vintage acoustic, and it's amazing. That guitar is so great.
Is that? But what's the going rate for those? Like typically?
Oh, $500 or $600 because the neck looks like a ski slope, and they need tons of work.
Right, but if you get one that's restored, is it?
I don't know. It depends on who you get it from. I think there's a couple other guys that charge quite a bit more than that, but I couldn't believe it. 62 Harmony Sovereign, completely rebuilt, plays like a dream, shipped to my door in a TKL case for $1,300.
Sold.
Yeah, I'm not complaining at all. I sold 4 or 5 other guitars in town just from playing that on sessions, you know, which I don't do a lot of acoustic on sessions. I love playing acoustic, but when I get called to go work on a record, I'm usually on electric. And the few times that I would bring that, sometimes I would just bring it and give it to the acoustic guy and say, you got to check this out. And, you know, everybody's got one in town now, it seems like. But yeah, anyway, very minimal stuff on that track.
Brilliant. Well, I want to move on to 2 of the picks that were not artists that I had heard of. You know, we've kind of spent the lion's share here talking about sort of the hits, the number ones. And these are indie artists that you've worked with. And this next song, I never heard it before you had presented it, you know, as an option. And it's got some killer guitar parts, some really classic Strat, you know, lead tones on it. And the song is It's Political, and Shannon LaBrie is the name of the artist.
Yeah.
How did this make it kind of all the songs that we could have chosen, what stood out to you about this as kind of being one of Justin's picks and not me just hounding you for hits?
And it's something that a lot of my YouTube subscribers reference a lot. Like somehow I think I mentioned it in an interview that I did a long time ago, maybe a True Tone thing with Zach Childs. Or,
Right, because this was quite a while ago. This was 2016. Yeah, it's almost 10 years. Probably recorded 10 years ago.
Yeah. We were at House of Blues in the D room, and I got approached by Shannon to work on this record, and she wanted to get together and talk first before she hired me. And so we met up, and she said, well, I'm just really in this like kind of Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin phase. And I'm like, yeah, that's my phase. That's where I live, you know? And she said she wanted a bunch of really creative guitar and overplay. If you're going to err on one side, err on overplaying.
This is the music to most guitar players' ears.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're the band is, I think they added B3 after the fact, but it was literally bass, drums, me, and Shannon, and she played and sang as well. And she's really great. I think her stuff's cool. That whole record I think is really cool. The guys that made it are friends of mine, have become friends of mine, and I've worked for them on a bunch of other things. And I don't know. It was just one of those. I picked it because I love Shannon, would love to promote her stuff. Everybody who follows my channel, or a lot of people who do, are familiar with it. And then it's outside of the Nashville pop country thing that I do a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so that was the reasoning. Do
you remember what you used on it for Strat? Was it the Sen Strat, or was it?
No, I had one of the Fiesta Overburst Landau custom shops. Yeah. And so it's that guitar on the entire record. And I was playing it through my deluxe reverb. And I used an early 60s Fender style tremolo, like a brown panel amp tremolo. So that's on the whole time. It kind of almost gives it I got it pretty subtle, but it's almost like a real subtle univibe. Like that tremolo is, to me, is like, is it chorus? Is it tremolo? Yes. You know?
No overdrives, that's all amped gain?
No, I think I had a fuzz pedal on. I think I had a Morgan Shadow Fuzz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I love that pedal.
And are you just rolling it back a little bit on the volume to kind of get it less fuzzy and just a little more glassy and overdrive like?
Well, you can set it that way on the pedal. If you have the gain low, it's just a fat, hairy, still kind of articulate, clean. You know, it's not like most fuzzes where it's it just completely takes over. You know. That's a fantastic pedal.
I don't know if he makes it anymore.
I don't think so.
Kind of short-lived. They were really cool though. I remember they had like this Lexan or some sort of like overlay, and so when you would engage it, like the LED would illuminate the Morgan logo, I think, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Yep.
Yeah, they were really cool.
Yeah.
I think I had seen one when Joe still lived in California.
Yeah.
That he had, you know, some where I think he was I can't remember what city he was living in, one of those beach cities in Orange County.
Yeah.
And but yeah, very cool. And yeah, it sounds absolutely great. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So the final mix, I think they added quite a bit of reverb and stuff, like for effect.
I think it was one of my notes here is like yeah, they had quite a bit of reverb. Like what reverb was that?
Way out there. Well, the unit that I was using for the harmonic tremolo is a Victorinox. I had the ammo can version, which I don't think they make anymore. They make a unit called the Reverberato.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you could pay a little bit extra for them to fit the whole thing in an ammo can, and they would call it the Reverberamo.
I see.
And it was
because a Reverberato, it could be like a head on its own.
It's
like
big.
It's not an insignificant size.
It's fairly good size, but the ammo can, I got that unit after listening to Blake Mills, and you know, that's what he was using with the Tweed amp or whatever, and So you have basically an old Fender spring tank is what the reverb is, and then the tremolo is from a Brown Deluxe, or whatever.
And John Mayer also has been known to use those as well. You can see some of his reverberatos on top of his amps.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, live especially, you can see him sometimes on stage.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, well, let's do that
Let's
one.
hear it.
Oh, it's political, yeah. It's so ridiculous and cynical. You must believe that we're invisible, and we've got nothing to say. Oh, it's political, a super foul, egotistical. Oh, every word is so predictable. Every promise you make. I want a prodigy, someone honest with integrity, a fairy tale in this democracy. I wanna move out west, bury all my hope in Kansas. I'm talking about a disconnect. Oh, it's political. Oh yeah, it's so political. Hysterical. It's just enough.
So it's that kind of vibe, the whole song, and it was so fun. I mean, the record was 2 or 3 takes of just, be a fuzzy Hendrix on this like kind of groove, and it was really fun.
And I love that last lick where you kind of come out of it. It's like how Neil Sean comes out of Lights of that solo.
Oh,
Think
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, maybe that's where I got it.
No, I'm sure.
Thanks. Thanks, Neil.
you know who he got it from. So
Right. Yeah. Everybody's. You get into it in such you want to imitate. Like, I want to create the feelings that hearing that gave me
Yeah.
for other people, or try to find it again myself. And so you get people that are like, there are guys that I feel like sound 95% of Stevie Ray Vaughan, and that's their thing, and it's great. That's cool. I make a living out of creating those sorts of compelling sounds and parts that sort of make people lean in, or take you back to something that you grew up loving.
The tone on that, I think, is like that's like a prime example of just like amazing Strat tone. It's like that's how you want a Strat lead tone to sound. Like when I hear that in my head, I'm like, that's an example of that.
Yeah. The fuzz pedal, man, the Morgan Shadow fuzz with the gain sort of down is just like
I would have never
instant
guessed.
fattener.
I would have
Instant
never
fattener.
guessed.
Dude, I used to play gigs. I would gig with her too. Very rarely will you get me out on a gig in town, but I would play gigs with her, and I remember we would play like a 30-minute set, and there was this huge lineup of other bands, and all these guys were carrying boards this size. I've got one this size. I'm not knocking them, but I would show up with a Princeton reverb and a jumper cable and that pedal, and I would put it on top of the Princeton, and I would have the reverb cranked, and I would have the switch out so I could turn the tremolo on, and I'd just leave the fuzz pedal into the amp and just work it all from the guitar's volume. And I had so many young guitar players come up being like, man, I don't know what you're doing, but I feel like I sound like a moron compared to like, why do I have all this crap? Why did I bring a giant pedal board and 2 amps and 5 guitars? I would take like the Tele or the Strat, Princeton, and that fuzz pedal. That was
Wow. Wow.
And it was killer. It sounded so good. It was really inspiring to play.
So like somebody like Shannon at this time, indie artist, not like a huge label or something like that behind her. can just like anybody like that like hire an A-list session musician like you, or is there like a protocol to how that works in town?
I think it's all pretty word of mouth, and we filter what we want to play on or not. If you're a little too busy to do something like that, I don't know, then I kind of feel bad for the guys that are just booked wall to wall. I was just talking with a friend of mine, a drummer named Tommy Harden. Tommy's been in Nashville since the 90s. Back then, you had showcase guys who would make a decent living literally only playing showcases. So new artists who were trying to get a career off the ground, playing around town, inviting a label out, getting a bunch of food or an open bar to make sure the right people came out to see them. You had players that were doing that several times a week and making a decent living. Then you had the demo session guys, and they were playing on all the demos, and they did great. And then you had the guys who were like 2 or 3 people per chair who were on every record. And it didn't overlap much. And then the touring world didn't overlap at all. And now it's just wildly different. I remember Tommy telling me, the reason why I brought Tommy up, I remember him telling me that he was never the guy, ever, in the 90s up to mid 2000s or whatever. He worked triples 6 days a week. And the only time he ever got on like a big record was when somebody made a scheduling error, or they put something together last minute, and like Lonnie Wilson and Shannon Forrest and Eddie Bayers and whoever were all already booked, and then, hey, well, Tommy will do great. Let's get Tommy in here, But now, man, like it's almost like there's no lanes anymore. It's just, are you working? So many guys I see on records, like the acoustic guy yesterday plays for Kenny Chesney, Danny Rader, Rob's done tours. He played with Delbert for such a long time. And then Bob Seger, right? Half of Tim McGraw's band still do sessions. Adam Schoenfeld and Billy Nobel. Nobody cares anymore. So I love the idea of getting approached by an indie artist who's really good and saying, hey, let's do something that's out of your ordinary. Like, sign me up. If you can pay me, obviously, like, great, let's do it. And I'll work that out on a case-by-case basis or whatever. But I love stuff like that. You get so in one mode, in like country radio mode, like, let's make sure this gets to the top of media base. I need to get outside of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, people can hire me. Yes, people can pay me to play guitar, Mason.
Well, speaking of other indie artists, another artist that you had mentioned that you wanted to touch on today was Preston Cooper, and a song of his called Weak.
Yeah.
And this is fairly recent, this year, in fact. And can you tell us about why you picked that song, that artist? Like, what is it that drew you to that as kind of one that we want to showcase today?
Yeah, that's another song that everybody I run into in town since we cut it tells me how great that song is and how they love what I played on it. So it was just sort of in my mind when you asked, and he's a really, really great singer. New guy, getting off the ground. He's in the commercial world. We cut that with...
So not an indie guy. He's
not totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't... I'm pretty sure he's signed with somebody.
Okay. Because
we got upgraded for that session. It was cut at an indie rate, and they're putting stuff out for him, A bunch of my friends got hired to play the CRS week. I think it's Country Radio Seminar. Is what they call it. All the new artists who are trying to get their stuff spun on country radio, And even some more established artists, they go downtown and they play these private shows for like radio people, for station PDs from markets all over the country, right? And so a couple of my buddies got hired to play in this band that was backing up several artists all from the same label. And it might have been Big Machine. Maybe he got signed to Big Machine. I don't remember. Anyway, he had 2 songs and one of them was weak. And so 2 of my friends had to learn my stuff and they're like, man, this was so good, you know? And it's just, I will say, of all the accolades you could earn in town, like the approval of your peers and saying that like you did something that inspired them, it's like, okay, that's cool. I love hearing that, you know. I always tell people I hold this with an open hand, you know, like I'm a husband and a father first. And if somehow this line of work ended up affecting my family adversely, then I would change things to make that work, you know. So I really try to detach my ego from everything. I try to not let it define who I am. I try not to seat my identity in my playing, you know. So coming from that position, still getting the people telling you that you highly respect and that you see in the trenches every day that you did something really cool is very special to me, you know, because those guys, I feel like they're better guitar players than I am. You know? So, you want to go to that song?
I want to go to that song.
Let's do it.
Strong, like a West Texas El Paso wind. When it's gone, 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 it comes back again strong, like an oak tree out in the yard. Girl, getting me falling this hard. You gotta be strong like the bourbon. It works when I'm hurting. Right now I'm down on my knees. You make me weak. I fall to pieces. Just you and Jesus get me where I need to be. Weak, strong.
Okay. So the whole song's like that, and there's a cool solo. Again, it's like, how can you keep it in service of the track?
Yeah.
You know, it's not Preston Cooper featuring Justin Ostrander. It's hey, here's a really emotional, aggressive guitar part that fits with the lyric. You know, the whole thing is weak versus strong, and how this girl makes him feel weak or whatever, you know, in terms of his will. So there's a lot of those chicks in there, a lot of those Cornell Dupree chicks, and I'll tell you what my mindset is. Like, it's really hard to play those in time, okay? If you want to play them right, they've got to be upstrokes, but they're on a super strong downbeat. And that messes people up. And I feel like new guitar players tend to anticipate a lot, and they end up rushing them. And it's like, nothing feels worse than a rushed chick with reverb to me. Just like nothing sounds worse than out of tune slide. Like, slide's either perfect or it's terrible, you know? I feel like I don't know. I feel like for some reason I have really strong opinions about the chicks as well, in the same way. Like, it's got to be right behind the beat. Even I'll notice that one didn't feel very good on a track that I played on. I'm like, where is that? And I'll tell, oh, that one's right on the beat. It's got to be right behind it for me. So my process, my advice to guitar players to getting that down is you have to let go of tension everywhere in your body.
Mm.
Wherever you hold it, which everyone does somewhere. For me, a lot of times I'll just lock my foot up on my tiptoes, like I'll lock my calf up, or I'll push my tongue against the roof of my mouth when I'm really concentrating, and I'll be done with the take, and I'm like, oh wow, why is my tongue sore? Because I've been, locking it against the roof of my mouth trying to play something. When I found all the tension in all the places and got rid of it and just played with the music and not trying to anticipate it, I found that my natural, like the time it takes my body to actually make the motion, put it right behind where it wanted to be. I am not subdividing after the beat. Don't ever do that. Like, just relax a little bit and try to play with the music, and you'll fall in that spot. That's how it worked for me. Maybe
I think that's a really insightful piece of advice, because I know for sure that I do that when I'm concentrating, and I think, as you said, I think most guitar players do. They're concentrating so hard that they forget, that this is music, and there's an emotional component to this, Yeah,
exactly.
Well, what the heck is this guitar? It sounds incredible.
Some old piece of junk. It's a 55. It's all original, except I've got the original tuners in the case. It was either an overspray or a refin on the body only. I did a video recently thinking that it might not actually be a body refin, because I thought that all 55s were white, right? They got away from the yellowy 54 thing. But that's not true. I went on Reverb and I looked at, 50s tellies, and I found a couple that look exactly like mine, and they're from early to mid 55. So this is the original body color. That's what I was wrong about. So I thought, well, was it even refinished, or was it just shot over with clear? And Tom, Uncle Larry, watched my video, and he sent me this massive text. Like, he loves this stuff so much. I do too. I was like, this is awesome. I'm reading a book, And he said that he took it to Groons, and they said it was definitely, he's like, there's a guy there that knows exactly what he's talking about. And he said it was refin. So maybe it just started to, sometimes the nitro starts to gas off, and then the finish kind of starts flaking off. That happened on my old custom, and so it was overshot with clear in a couple spots to keep the finish from continuing to like flake off on your leg or against you or on your arm or whatever. So pretty sure body only refin, but it's totally straight, and it weighs almost nothing. I mean, that's like
this is like a low 6,
maybe 6 pounds.
Yeah.
Sounds like $1 million. I had originally gone over to Tom's house to buy an old Guild hollow body that I was a big fan of in his hands, and he was selling it for cheap because for some reason they don't command a high price. And he gave me the guitar, and I checked it out and was like, all right, well, I'll Venmo you. And then he goes, man, come back here, and I've got something else. And he opens this tweed case that's got some duct tape on it. Looks like, oh no, what am I getting into? And I picked it up and was just like, holy crap! Like everything's just so eager to jump off the guitar, all the notes. That's the best way I know how to describe it. I've had a ton of reissues. None of them do this. I've got a great Danocaster white guard telly. I've got this Jeff Sen telly that's admittedly very left of center. It's an alder body. It's got different pickups. It's not trying to be a 50s white guard. But nothing does this thing, And the only other telly that I'd heard that does this was Dan Strain's 56 that he let me play while I was picking up one of my other guitars that I bought from him. And I remember playing it through his amp and being like, man, whenever you want to sell this, he just started laughing at me. Like, he didn't even let me finish. He's like, dude, get in line. He's like, I'm going to be buried with that guitar. And I was like, well, why does nothing do this? He goes, don't know. He's like, we haven't figured it out. I'm like, I agree. There's so many old duds. So many old guitars are absolute dogs. But the good ones, we have not got all the way there yet. And this is a good one. So,
I mean, from what we're hearing here, it's incredible.
It sounds really great, right? I love playing bluesy stuff on an old Tele with all the just like aggression, you know. And it's so you hear the attack so different. I don't know, man. There's people that are like, I only play Teles. I kind of get it now. You know, this one with a bunch of gain on the bridge pickup, it'll sort of bloom like a PAF, you know. Like there's a little bit of a thing to it, you know.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's magical.
Yeah. Big fan. So I got it from Tom and I played it a bunch and I called a couple people. I even called Dan from Danocaster and was like, what do you think, man? Is this? He's like, are they making any more 55 Teles? Point taken.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, he seems like he's shepherded a lot of people into some great Teles, like Zach Childs too. I think that he bought some sort of like Esquire that had been modded, and I think Dan kind of, you know,
Dan's always had these like imperfect specimens of old vintage guitars that are great, you know, like there's something that made it affordable or whatever. Like the body only refin took thousands of dollars off the value of this guitar, thankfully, you know.
Yeah.
So.
But for as a player, I think that stuff is pretty insignificant. I mean,
totally.
There's nobody, whether it's you or it's Tom or whoever, that are looking for collector's pieces in most cases. Yeah.
Tom is. The last time I worked at the same studio, it's been a while since we've worked together, but I was in the A room at Blackbird a few months ago, and he was in the D room. But as I was parking and getting ready to go in, he comes out of the A room office carrying what's obviously a guitar in a cardboard box, like a FedEx box. So he pulls the tailgate down on his truck and he starts opening it. He's like, you got to see this, my love, you know, like talking like he does. Opens the box and it's I didn't understand what it was. It was a thermometer case from an early Blackguard. It just looked too small to me to have a Tele in it. So he opens the case and it's this perfect 53. And he's like, check it out. It's like, you can be the first one to play it, you know? So I picked it up and I played it and was like, oh, wow. Like there's totally families that these 50s Fenders fit into. Like the 53s and 54s are different than the 55s. 55s are kind of transitional. Mine's transitional. I've got a 54 flat pole bridge pickup in it. And then 56 and 57 are different. And then you get into the rosewood neck guitars, and those are, or fretboard guitars. Those are different, you know? Then you get to the late 60s where they were maple cap necks, and those are different and have their own cool aggression. And you can kind of hear it immediately when you play it. Like acoustically, that guitar was totally different than this. You know? And I asked him what he paid for it, and he was like, I was like, what is that, like 45? And he kind of laughed. He's like, that's pre-COVID prices, man. You know? I was like, you paid significantly more than that and had it shipped in a FedEx box? Like, that's brave. In the original case, you know? So, I don't know.
Well, I guess
I would feel like if I found one, I was like, I'm going to come drive and pick it up. Or get a plane ticket and buy it its own seat, you know?
Yeah, I mean, at that rate, I suppose it's probably worth it.
But he's all that to say, he's getting into collector level guitars with his Burst, He did a video comparing a Les Paul and a late 50s 335, his burst and a 335. Man, I always think he sounds so great on a 335. Like there's just something about the way he plays that I think 335s sound better in his hands.
He had one that was a natural that kind of looked like yours for a while, had a Bigsby. And I don't know what happened to that one, but
he sold it. We all thought,
I thought that was
surely this is well, we all thought that of the factory mono 59 355 that he sold to Rob. Rob used that yesterday. That's such a great sounding guitar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking for keepers to use and keep in my toolbox. Tom just loves trading stuff out. He doesn't get attached to anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if you can do it.
Yeah. I'm glad he didn't get attached to this. You know?
Right. Yeah, he spreads the love.
Yeah.
Well, Justin, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure to get to see you in your element here in your studio and get to run through some of the hits and also introducing me to some of these newer artists and these indie artists that are, that you've got to play on, and they're amazing guitar parts. And I appreciate the variety of instruments we got to use. And I just want to thank you for all the stuff that you do for music. And I just can't appreciate all of the information that you're sharing with all of us amateur guitar players on your YouTube channel. And if you haven't checked out Justin's channel, make sure that you check it out on YouTube. We'll make sure we have all those links where people can find you. Also, I wanted to mention that you have a guitar course that people can check out that you've done in collaboration with Brett Papa.
Right.
Can you tell people a little bit about that, just if they're curious?
Yeah. So I feel like most early, like beginning to intermediate guitar players are focused so much on learning other things that they think are cool. It's kind of hard to make that transition to where you're creating something.
Right.
So the course is called Tools for the Creative Guitarist, and it just sort of outlines like what my headspace is, how I see the entire fretboard, how I'm listening to the rest of the band to put notes that fit in the mix, coming up with something that's really creative, like what does that even mean? What does it mean to come up with a hook, rather than just playing notes in the scale or notes in the chord. Like everybody kind of understands that if I play notes that are in the chord that I'm playing over, it's going to work. Well, there's a lot more to it than that, So the only thing you really need to know, the course assumes that you can play a major scale and that you know basic bar chords. And then we sort of connect all these patterns all over the neck to give you the freedom to move around other guitar players, like if you're one of a couple players in the band, or just other instruments. Just because somebody's not playing guitar doesn't mean that what you do doesn't need to work with them, So what register is a keyboard player in, So there's like 4 example songs where I come up with simple parts over Tom Petty style rock to maybe a little bit of like the modern rock country thing, and it's gotten really great feedback. I was blown away. We sold a bunch of them in like 2 weeks.
Awesome.
When it was released, and they keep selling. So I'm really happy. A lot of people seem to be getting a lot out of it.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that's also contained within the links. And again, just
Appreciate
thank you
it.
for having us today. And
Yeah.
it's been
Thanks for
real
coming out.
insight. Yeah.
Yeah.